can access it 1,000 ways, yes.
And also next week and next year.
Yes, it goes on, but it goes on the archive, so people can keep watching it. But I would be. I'm just trying to find my last teller.
The Story Cafe is now live. Just come through on Facebook.
That's why Yuli just appeared again.
Shared community. It's a shared one. There's also a copy link.
Hi, Alpid.
Very nearly there. Whoa.
I'm live, by the way. You're fed because you were speaking, you were coming up as.
So, Julio, where's he gone? I've lost him off my screen.
Hi, John.
Hi, Ali.
How are you?
Are we live on? Are we streaming live on Facebook yet?
Don't seem to be at the moment.
That's okay. We're just
yes, we are.
Are we there? All three? Fantastic. Well.
Thank you, Yuli. Good tech.
Yeah, Nanalu's down there. So between the two of them, they can keep us all under control tonight. So we're being controlled from both Marrakesh and Morocco. So I'm just making sure before we start. Have I got? Oh no, that's not it. And ready. That's you saying we're ready. Well, ladies and gentlemen, an assembled company, welcome to a very special night at the World Storytelling Cafe. We are connecting the world by story. And tonight, we are it's a theme tonight. It's textiles and jewellery. And guess whose idea that was? Well, I know some of you are from the textile and jewellery communities, so I will hand you over to the controller of all things cloth and solid, herself, Sarah Corbett. Would you like to say a few words before we get into the first story?
Thanks, John. Along with a team of amazing people from around the world, some of them who I can see here this evening, we take care of a space for people who love and study and collect jewellery from around the world and textiles from around the world. The admins wanted to do something to thank everybody who takes part in those communities, and this evening is that thank you in story form. Some of you might not know that before I was a jewel crazed lunatic, I was in the circus, and that's how I know this amazing gentleman, Mr. John Rowe. I've performed with him many times. It's traditional to ask for luck by passing a coin to a traveling performer. Everything has been paid for this evening, but if you want luck next year, then please send a virtual coin at the end of the stories to the people that are traveling by internet to entertain us tonight. I'm going to be quiet now. It's not my turn to talk.
Well, yes,
today.
I'll add to that, that although my name comes up on that, I'm not pocketing it all. I will share it out. Hello, Maria.
Hello.
So we'll now you will close the show for us if that's okay. That's right. Well, I'm going to actually start. I'm going to start tonight, and I'm going to tell a story that I've been telling for years and years and years. But I got it from a book of Irish fireside tales by Kennedy, who was a 19th century Dublin bookseller, and he had his he wrote down all the stories. There's a lot of noise. Can we all mute so it doesn't, or else the echo isn't me? I hope it's not me. Let's try again. Okay. It's not usually on this machine. Anyway, so let's get on with the story. And it's about the laziest girl in the whole world. Of course, I know there are no such thing as lazy girls, but being a storyteller, I can invent mythical creatures. And she was the sort of girl, she wouldn't learn to spin, and she wouldn't learn to weave, and she wouldn't learn to cut and sew. And some of you might say, I don't blame her. But her mum, well, you know how mothers are. They'll whine and they'll whine about their children. And then they love them all the same. So she was going on, oh, what a terrible daughter I've got. Oh, she'll never come to anything. Oh, what am I going to do with her? When who rode by but the prince himself? You must be really upset with your daughter, said the prince. Now, doesn't matter how upset you are with your children. If you're talking about them to anyone else, they are the most wonderful creatures that ever walked on the face of the earth. And so it was with mother. She said, no, 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 no. I'm just afraid that she'll work too hard. I could, you know, in one day she can take a sack of wool, and I'm going to lean back so I can show how tall it is. This tall and this wide, well, much wider than the screen, this wide, and spin it into the finest of thread. And on the second day, she can take that thread and cut and sew it into the finest of cloth. And on the third day, she can take that cloth and cut and sew it into the finest of shirts. Oh, wonderful, said the prince. Maybe my mother, the queen, will allow me to marry her. Well, not many people turn down a prince. You may question the wisdom of that, but you know, Zara's got a few stories up there that are about princes you really wouldn't want to go anywhere near. But but she got on the back of the prince, and they rode off the palace, and the queen saw them coming and thought, what is that prince doing with the country girl on the back of his horse? When she heard what she could do, she said, that's fantastic. Servants, bring me down my spinning wheel. Bring me a sack of wool this tall and this wide. And tomorrow morning I shall come knocking on your door, and I will expect that wool to be spun into the finest of thread. Well, there's the girl. She's looking at the sack of wool. And she's looking at the spinning wheel. And she's wishing she'd listened to her mother. At best, she'd be sent home for lying. At worst, she'd have her head cut off. When in through the window came a little old woman with the most enormous foot. And she asked the girl her trouble. She said, that's no trouble at all. I'll do your spinning for you. All you have to do is invite me to the wedding. Of course I'll invite you to the wedding, said the girl. Next day when the queen came knocking upon the door, there was the finest thread you've ever seen in all your life. Wonderful, said the queen. Now, servants, bring me down my mahogany loom. And tomorrow I shall come knocking on your door, and I will expect that thread to be woven into the finest of cloth. Well, there she is. She's looking at the loom, and she's looking at the thread, and she's looking at the shuttle. And she doesn't know whether to put the shuttle that way, in her ear, out her nose, or what. When in through the window came a little old woman, no taller than that, wider in the middle than she was tall. And she asked the girl her troubles, and the girl told her. Said, it's no trouble at all. I'll do your weaving for you. All you have to do is invite me to the wedding. Of course I'll invite you to the wedding, said the girl. And the next day when the queen came knocking upon the door, there was the finest cloth you've ever seen in all of your life. Wonderful, said the prince, said the queen. Now all you have to do is cut and sew that cloth into the finest of shirts, and the finest of all will be worn by the prince himself at the wedding. Well, there she is. She's looking at the cloth, and she's looking at the scissors, and she's looking at the needle, and she's looking at the cotton. And she doesn't know whether to thread the cotton through the scissors and sew with the scissors and cut with the needle or what. When in through the window came a little old woman, no taller than that, with the most enormous nose. It was a nose bigger than mine. It was a nose the size of an elephant's trunk. And she asked the girl her trouble. She said, and the girl told her, she said, that's no trouble at all. I'll do your cutting and your sewing for you. All you have to do is invite me to the wedding. Of course, I'll invite you to the wedding, said the girl. And the next day when the queen came knocking upon the door, there were the finest shirts you've ever seen in all of your life. And the finest of all was worn by the prince himself at the wedding. Well, there they are at the wedding banquet. And there's the queen, there's the prince, and there's his new bride, the girl. The queen's going on and on and on. Oh, what fun we're going to have, spinning and weaving and cutting and sewing. The girl's thinking, oh no, I'm going to have my head cut off for sure. When the servant tapped the prince on the shoulder, excuse me, sire, but there's a little old woman at the gate who said the bride invited her to the wedding. Any friend of the bride is friend of mine, said the prince, pulling her in. And in came the little old woman, no taller than that, with the most enormous foot. And she sat down next to the prince. Now, we've all been to parties or something, a bit of a do, where the hosts have sat us down next to someone we don't know because we're supposed to mix. And you know, there's this kind of embarrassed silence when you're thinking, what have I got in common with you that we can talk about? It'll usually last about 5 to 15 seconds, but it feels like 3 hours. And it was no different with the prince. He's looking down, and then he saw her foot. He said, I know it's very rude, and I know it's very bad manners, but I've got to know, how come you're only this tall and you've got a foot that size? She said, well, to tell you the truth, it's the spinning. I spend all day pedaling away at the treadle, making the wheel go round and round and round. And the more I pedal at the treadle, the bigger my foot gets. And I've been spinning all my life. And he looked at his bride's tiny little foot and said, no, no. When the servant tapped him on the shoulder for a second time, excuse me, sire, but there's a little old woman at the gate who said the bride invited her to the wedding. Any friend of the bride is a friend of mine, said the prince, putting her in. And in came the little old woman, no taller than that, wider in the middle than she was tall. And she pushed a few people aside, and she sat down. People aside, and she sat down. We got someone, that's it. And she sat down next to the prince. That's okay. We just had a little gap there while she was getting comfortable. And the prince looked at her and thought, yeah, well, it's incredibly rude of me, I know. And it is incredibly bad manners. But I've got to know, how come you're only that tall and you're wider in the middle and you are tall? He said, to tell you the truth, it's the spinning. It's the weaving. I spend all day sitting weaving. When I'm weaving, I'm stretching from this side of the loom to that side of the loom, from this side of the loom to that side of the Luna. The more I sit and the more I stretch, the wider I get. And I've been weaving all my life. And the prince looked at his bride, thought, oh no. No. When the servant tapped him on the shoulder for a third time, excuse me, sire, but there's a little old woman at the gate who said the bride invited her to the wedding. Any friend of the bride is a friend of mine, said the prince, bring her in. And in came the little old woman with the most enormous nose. And she sat down next to the prince. Prince sort of tapping her nose. Well, I am the prince, after all. I can ask what I like. How come you're only this tall and you've got a nose the size of an elephant's trunk? She said, well, to tell you the truth, it's the cutting and the sewing. I spend all day cutting and sewing. When I'm cutting and sewing, I'm bending down over the table. And because my nose is at the bottom of my head, and all the blood runs into my head, all the blood runs into my nose, and the weight of the blood over the years has made my nose longer and longer and longer. And I've been cutting and sewing all my life. And he looked at his bride and thought, oh no. And he stood up and he proclaimed to the whole queendom and the whole banquet that his bride was never to spin, nor was she to weave, nor was she to cut and sew for the rest of her life. And though each and every one of you is good looking as the bride herself, if you want to be that lazy, you've got to make sure you got 3 fairies to look after you. Why, Ben? Story end. Thank you. Now, who have we got? Who's next for the chopping block? We'll move over to Texas. We'll go. That's a very fine thing you've got round your neck, David.
Oh, thank you. It's a pashmina. I collect pashminas.
Well, the stage is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I don't know if I should speak review myself or not, so just let me know. Anyway, before I start, to Zara, I would like to say Chetori. And this is all the Farsi I know.
خوبم مرسی شما چطوری؟
All right, cool. All right, back to my story. This story is inspired and adapted from one written by Anita Amerizvani, and I hope to give it great honor and to honor the author, Anita Amerizvani. The story I'm going to tell you is, let me go here, hold on. The Singing Carpet. Oh, best beloved, once there was, and there was not, a great sultan, a sultan of wisdom and justice, a sultan who knew that his people loved him, for he loved them as much. And this sultan, may he be blessed, the crescent of his heart, the rose of his eye, was his daughter, whom we shall call Layla. Now, Layla, such a woman she is, or was, such a woman tall, skin as dusty ivory, eyes flashing black, laughter as the peri bells, a mind sharper than any scimitar you have ever seen, who loved to talk with her father, who loved to debate politics and social and mathematics. And Layla also was learned in sacred geometry. However, that was not all Layla did. Oh no, best beloved. Layla loved to knot and weave carpets. And such carpets that she did were beautiful. And that was what she was known for. And now, best beloved, it came a time in which the Sultan, her father, called to her and said, Layla, crescent of my heart, rose of my life, it is time for you to marry. And Layla looked at him and said, Father, I do not wish for you to choose. I wish to choose. And her father said, very well. So all the eligible young men came around, and Layla found a little bit of this and some of that. And she said, no, no, no. Finally, the Sultan listened much too hard to his ministers and viziers and called her to him and said, Layla, I give you this charge. You are to weave and knot the most beautiful carpet within a year. And if you do, and it is the most beautiful carpet, then you shall choose your husband. However, if you do not finish this carpet, and if it is not the most beautiful carpet ever, I shall choose your husband for you. But father, no, you must marry. And that is the condition. So Layla agreed, and her father caused a great tower to be built outside the palace. Tall, very tall, with windows on 4 sides of the very top. And it was there that Layla went with her handmaidens and her servants and her loom and the comb to beat the threads and her knotting tools, which also were her hands. However, the only wool she had was black and white. What was she to do? She could make the most beautiful carpet, but in black and white. So during the day, Layla set herself to her task, weaving and knotting and banging the threads with her comb and singing beautiful songs to pass the time. Little known to Layla, though, the black and the white wool absorbed the magic of her voice, absorbed it, and beyond her understanding, beyond her view, the skeins of wool in the back behind her would begin to dance slightly, ever so slightly. You would think a breeze had hit it. And it was during this time of her confinement in the tower that she was visited by a glorious bird, a bird of many colors, reds and greens and blues, oranges, yellows, and colors that have no name. And when she would sing, the bird would sing, and she looked up and the bird was looking at her, and they sang together glorious harmonies of the spheres, geometry of music. And Layla would sing and beat the carpet and knot the carpet and weave the carpet. And within a few months, she was finished. Ah, my friends, oh, my best beloveds, it was black and white. Beautiful were the designs, but was it good enough? During this time, her friend, the bird of so many colors, would come every day and sing with her. And little to Layla's knowledge, the music was absorbed by the threads and the carpets. One day, when the bird came to visit, after she had laid the carpet out and was combing it to fluff it up, it jumped off of the windowsill and strutted ever so over to the carpet and reached back and yanked a red feather and lay it down. And that which was to be red became red. And the bird began to sing, and Layla began to sing, and their voices were absorbed by the carpet. The next day, the bird came again. It hopped off of the sill and came over and reached back and plucked yet another feather, royal blue, and it laid it on the carpet, and that which was to be blue became blue, and it sang and danced, and Layla sang, and the harmonies were absorbed by the carpet. And each day the bird would visit a yellow feather, an orange feather, a green feather. And the last day, it pulled out one of the feathers of a color with no name. And it laid it down, and the carpet began to shimmer, and light came from it. And Layla, oh, such beautiful carpet, such love and music and dance. And she stepped on the carpet and began to dance and sing, and the bird began to dance and sing until it fell over. Layla reached down and picked up her friend and stroked it and held it. And the bird fluttered and, as though to get away, and she put it back on the sill, and off it went. She sent word to her father, the Sultan, that the carpet was finished. And so it was the next day. Layla's handmaidens and servants came down out of the tower. The porters carried the rolled up carpet, and they all went into the courtroom, the grand palace. And there before the Sultan, Layla made obeisance. Father, I have done what you have asked. I have created a carpet. Well, said her father, that's wonderful. But is it the most beautiful carpet? And Layla said, behold. And the porters untied it and rolled it out. And it was large, large, large. And the colors were beyond description. And the whole court gasped in wonder and admiration. And Layla, she listened. And she heard music coming from the carpet. She heard her voice. She heard the chirping of her bird friend and the harmonies, more beautiful than the sphere of the stars. And then, oh, best beloved, in the middle of the carpet, light began to swirl and swirl, and the colors of the carpet began to swirl with it. And there, her friend, the bird, appeared. And the bird began to sing. Ah, glorious music. And Layla began to sing the harmonies. And slowly, before the very eyes, I was there. I witnessed this. The bird transformed, taller and taller, less bird-like, less bird-like, less bird-like. And there stood in front of everyone the most handsome prince anyone had ever seen. His robes were the colors of the same as the carpet. His turban and his jewels shone with the iridescence of the feather that had no color. And Layla laughed and sang and wept in joy. And she ran to him. And together they sang. And as they were singing, the carpet began to move ever so gently. And it rose ever so off the floor. And it twirled ever so slowly as the lovers sang. And when they had finished their song, it lowered itself back onto the floor. And so, oh best beloved, Layla chose the prince for her husband. And the music rang for days, and people feasted for days, and all were so, so happy. As for the carpet, well, that is another story for another time. Thank you.
Wonderful, David. I love that whenever there's a really good textile story, there's a lot of food involved as well. It's a bit like Marrakesh, you know. When Sarah takes me round the souk, and whatever time we're dealing with textiles or carpets, a huge bowl of couscous appears. That's well, one of the joys of curating the cafe for the last few months is that I've met some fantastic storytellers that I didn't know before. And one of my more recent acquaintances is a fantastic storyteller. She will be with us next Saturday, but for now she's just doing the one story. So, ladies and gentlemen, and assembled company, can you please put your hands together and welcome Zara Afsar.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for giving me your valuable attention. Top, 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 coop, coop, coop. Top, 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 coop, coop, coop. Top, 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 coop, coop, coop. یکی و آنه دوتا بزن، یکی و آنه دوتا بزن، دم بنده رو جاش بزن، دم بنده رو جاش بزن، چاله گلی رو کورش کن، چاله گلی رو کورش کن، آبیه رو دوتا پس بزن، آبیه رو دوتا پس بزن، هشتا و آنه چارتا سرمه‌ای، هشتا و آنه چارتا سرمه‌ای، برو اول مهراب گلی، برو اول مهراب گلی، تاب تاب تاب، کوب کوب کوب، تاب تاب تاب، کوب کوب کوب. Not very long ago, in Iran, women used to live together. They used to wake up together, walk together, fetch water together, cook together, eat together, bath together, and weave carpets and rugs together. One late afternoon, after a long and full and hard day, in this vast and open land, where the mountains were so close and yet so far, where the goats and sheep were singing their best songs, where the children were running and laughing all the time, where the men were riding on their horses in the background. In this beautiful land, there were two women, one older one and one younger one. They were sitting together on the floor under a colorful tent. They were wearing colorful clothes and they were weaving a colorful rug. Top, 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 coo, coo, coo. Top, 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 coo, coo, coo. Top, 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 coo, coo, coo. Weaving and weaving and weaving. They kept a close eye on what was happening outside. They were taking all the impressions, weaving stories. Weaving rhythms. coo, coo, coo. Weaving music. Coo, coo, coo. Weaving songs. Ta, ta, ta. Coo, coo, coo. As they were weaving, the older woman shared a story with the younger one. She said, long ago, in the city of Baghdad, there lived a man who fell in love with a woman. The man lived on one side of Baghdad, and the woman lived on the other side of Baghdad. Between them was the rough, running river of Tigris. Ta, ta, ta. Coo, coo, coo. Ta, ta, ta. Coo, coo, coo. Ta, ta, ta. The man was drunk with love. He was elevated, liberated, enlightened with love. Every evening, he swam across the river like a strong warrior to be united with a woman. Music, poetry, candles, incense, jasmine's flowers, rose water, the moon, the stars, poetry, songs. Night after night, one night, 2 nights, 3 nights, 5 nights, many more nights, many more nights. Visits as such lasted for a good while. But little by little, drop by drop, leaf by leaf, warp by warp, weft by weft, knot by knot, breath by breath, their love faded away. The man saw himself. He saw himself right there in the middle. His ego gained life and blocked the light. The magic vanished. The strength ceased. The love disappeared. Another evening, the man paid a visit to the woman. Like all the other evenings, as he was eating the perfect saffron rice, the juicy, tender lamb, the thick yogurt, the rarest herbs, as he was eating the juiciest melon, the freshest walnut, it was as if he was absent. In his mind, he was searching for reasons to be difficult. Ta, ta, ta. Coo, coo, coo. Ta, ta, ta. Coo, coo, coo. The man turned to the woman and said, "Woman, I can see a brown big mole on your face. It hasn't been there before. When did it appear, huh? Tell me." The woman replied, "You speak to me of my mole. I speak to you of your love. Listen to me. Listen to me. Do not swim in that river back to your house tonight. I was born with this mole. I had it on my face all the time. It has never hurt me. but it is your flames of love that are hurting me now. The man laughed out loud. Ha! Do not despair, woman. I know that river so well. I've been swimming in that river twice every night. I know it inside out. The woman insisted, persisted. The man neglected, rejected. Coo, coo, coo. Tall, tall, tall. Coo, coo, coo. Tall, tall, tall. Like all the other nights, he said goodbye to her and left her. Like all the other nights, he swam across the river to get back to his house. But the magic was taken. The strength was gone. The love was lost. The rough running river of Tigris swallowed him down. The man drowned and died. This is how the younger woman remembered this story. That somewhere deep within us, somewhere, there must be magic, there must be love, there must be strength. Search for it, find it, value it. Don't let it fade away with time. Don't let it die.
Oh, wonderful, Sarah. Oh,
Thank you so much.
I should be really careful next time I'm in rivers. That was truly wonderful. Thank you. And we're going to get on David's magic carpet again, and we're going to go across. We're going to fly across to New Mexico, where we're going to find Bob Canagas, and I believe you have a short a tale for us. Whether it's short or whether it's long, I have no idea, but you definitely have a tale for us. Over to you, Bob.
Okay, thank you, John. I want to start by saying, Zara, thank you for that story. I'm on the eve of my 36th wedding anniversary, so I take that story to heart. And also, you invoked the river. And so I think I'm going to start by invoking two rivers in my life. The first is just a mile from where I'm sitting. It's the Rio Grande River that runs for many, many miles from the mountains down into Texas. The story that I'm going to tell is a tale that I heard from a 9 or 10-year-old girl about 20 years ago when we had first moved here to Corrales, New Mexico. I was walking down by the bosque, down by the forest, and encountered a family of two sisters, husband and wife. And we started up a conversation, and then they asked what I did. I said I was a storyteller. And they said, oh, that's wonderful. We love to tell stories to each other at night. Would you like to hear one that our daughter has just learned? So she told me the bones of the story that I'm about to tell. So all those many years ago. And I really hadn't thought about it until fairly recently. Now, the other river is a river from my childhood, the Hudson River, which runs from upstate New York down all the way down and empties out into the sea by New York City. And I was one of these lucky kids who got to wander in woods and fields. And I went to a place called Bear Mountain. And there at Bear Mountain, there was this wonderful nature trail. And on this trail is a monumental sculpture of the great American bard, Walt Whitman. And next to this bronze sculpture, carved into the a granite boulder left by glaciers thousands of years ago, were the opening lines of Walt Whitman's Song of the Open Road, which goes like this: afoot and lighthearted, I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me, the long brown path before me, leading wherever I choose. And henceforward, I ask not for good fortune. I myself am good fortune. And now I'll tell you the story of a man who had a very, very different sense of what good fortune was. This man was a trader, a merchant who sold and traded fine gemstones and jewelry. He was a successful and prosperous merchant. Now, when he was a child, he was like many of us who are lucky enough to have the outdoors to ramble in. He often would come home with a pocket full of shiny pebbles that he found in his pocket. And as time went on, that became a stone collection and a rock collection. And he collected other things as well, as kids do, and I did, and maybe you do too: shells, stamps, trading cards. But his interest in rocks and minerals grew and grew, and his interest began to focus more and more. And so he learned about geology. He learned about gemology. And as time went by, he discovered that not only did he have this great passion, but he had a very, very valuable talent that would serve him well for the rest of his life. He discovered that he was really good at trading and negotiating, this for that, first with his friends, but then in the marketplace, as he started off with a push cart selling trinkets, fruits, vegetables, then fabrics, whatever could turn a profit. But more and more, he became an expert in appraising jewels, and he became an expert in making profitable trades. He very seldom came up with the short end of the stick. Time went by, and soon he was about to make a trade, an exchange that would change his entire life. And here's how it went. He heard one day through the usual channels that a rich widow had fallen on hard times, and she was forced to sell an extensive collection of valuable jewelry at auction. Now,
Bob, sorry, you've muted yourself accidentally.
whoop, I don't know how I did that. Okay, where did I leave off? Someone tell me.
The last
to auction off jewelry.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I should do that on purpose sometimes, just to see if you're following the story. All right, so he heard about there was going to be an auction, and auctions had served him well. This is how he had made many of his most profitable deals. So he made plans to travel to the capital city. It was going to be a 2-day journey. And as he was making these plans, his mind was like a calculator, just going off and buzzing with the profit that he expected. And so he set off. He traveled all day, And at the end of that day, it found him at a familiar inn on the way to the capital city. He had a great meal that night, turned in early so that he could get an early start the next morning. But that night, he had a marvelous, marvelous dream. In the dream, he saw himself traveling along the road to the city. He saw in the distance a huge weeping willow tree. As he approached closer and closer to the tree, he saw that there was a man leaning up against the tree, his back propped up against the tree. He was dressed in white robes. He got closer and closer, and in the dream, he saw that this man was a holy man. He approached the holy man, who looked at him deeply into his eyes, reached deep into the folds of his robes, and handed the merchant the largest ruby that he had ever seen in his life. It was as big as his fist. It was worth a king's ransom. And then he woke up. He wasn't one to give too much credence to dreams. But as he continued on his journey that day, he was amazed to see in the distance a willow tree that looked exactly like it did in that dream he had had the previous night. And as he approached, he saw that sitting at the base of the tree was a holy man who looked down to his very last feature, like the man in his dream. And so he approached. The holy man, who was deep in meditation, suddenly looked at him. Master, master, please, I need to speak to you. Last night, I had the most amazing, amazing dream. I met you in my dream. And before he could continue, the holy man said, oh, I've been expecting you. I had a dream last night too. I dreamt that a man just like you would come and speak with me. I wonder, is this why you are here? He held out a ruby worth a king's ransom. Here, would you like to hold it? And so the merchant took hold of the ruby. He held it in his hand. He looked at every facet of it. And again, the calculations were going in his mind. Could he buy this? Could he buy this jewel? Could he afford it? What kind of profit could he make? He asked the holy man, he said, would you consider selling this jewel to me? The holy man responded, there will be no talk of buying and selling. If this jewel pleases you, here, just keep it. It's yours. Well, you can imagine that the merchant just couldn't believe his good luck. He hardly knew what to say other than a hearty thank you. And he continued now on his trip to the city, but now with an entirely different mission than buying the widow's jewels. Again, thinking about this profit that he was about to turn. He walked with the jewel in front of him, almost as if it was a magnet, as if he was mesmerized, as if it was drawing him to the city. He passed beautiful fields of wildflowers. Birds were chirping, but it was as if they didn't even exist. He just kept thinking about that jewel. Maybe now, after a successful trade, he would be able to move to one of those large mansions in the hill in the small city where he lived. And then several days passed, perhaps a week. And now the merchant was returning on the road from the capital city. And there, as he had hoped, there was the tree. There was the holy man, deep in meditation. This time, as he approached the holy man, again, the old one looked up. He said, "Oh, you have returned, as I've expected. Tell me, were you able to turn the great prophet that you had hoped for in the city? Did this serve you well?" And now the merchant reached into his bag and took out that same ruby. He said, "Here, please, take it back. I have learned that I don't need this jewel. I need something far, far more important. I need to know how it was. I need to know the knowledge of how it was that you were able to so freely just give it away." May we all be so wise. And as this crazy year comes to an end and we're at the cusp of a new year, may everyone here, gathered all around the world, find good fortune, whatever that means to you, in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. I was reminded at the beginning of that story of my dad, who used to pick up stones everywhere, and amongst the stone he actually picked up in the garden was this Stone Age, Ice Age axe head. It's between 2 and 5 million years old. So, and that just brought that to mind. And he just, so I thought I'd just share that for a second. Anyway, we come to our final teller for the evening, and your magic carpet. I'm so glad it's magic, because it'd be worn out by now, David, because we're now going to fly back across the Atlantic to we're going to land on the far side of the Irish Sea, and we're going to Maria Gillen in Ireland. Maria.
Hey, hiya,
hey, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's lovely, lovely to be here and to have listened to all of those beautiful stories tonight. And I suppose I'm a medicinal teller. So when I became a storyteller, I had to make an amulet. And this is the amulet that I made. So if I put it very near, no, it gets caught in the light. But if I put it very near, I carved into it in the old Gaelic lettering, Scéalta Lice, healing stories. So this is my amulet, my healing story amulet. And I learned a lot from the tradesmen that taught me. So from the silversmiths that taught me a lot of stuff that was mentioned today. So I thought I would mention that before I tell my story. The first was the rhythm of the story. And Zara told us about that. So when I hammered this, and you can see the lines on the back of my amulet, when I hammered this, I learnt a rhythm. So I listened to the silversmith as he tapped and showed us how to bend the silver. And he did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. And my head was, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm listening to the rhythm of your taps." And he said, "Here's the hammer, finish the spoon," because we were making spoons. So I finished the spoon, and he said, "You did that through the music of the jewellery, and you took my rhythm." And I said, "No, you took the rhythm of an Irish set dance." And he said, "Oh my God, you're right again." So the rhythm of my culture is in my amulet. The language of my culture is in my amulet. And this stone that changes colour is labradorite. And labradorite is the storyteller's stone. And it has the magical properties of the red thread of story, of seeing into the hearts of the audience and weaving the threads together. And that was another theme in our stories tonight. how we leave a little bit of ourselves in the art that we weave, be it stories or be it jewellery. So there's a huge correlation between the two. And then there is the wisdom of following the old patterns, like the Celtic rings. So I had to make a perfect ring, a perfect circle, and it has no beginning and it has no end. And that is what it is like when we hear stories that touch us over generation after generation after generation. Nobody knows where they began, and there is no end, because we want to continue to hear them. So this is a very special story circle to have been invited into for me, silversmith and medicinal storyteller. So thank you for the opportunity. And this story is also special to me, but I tell you that if we talk one-to-one, I will tell you why this story is special. It's a story I put together from all of our traditions. Jenny Brown lived in Cork. Oh, she was beautiful. She had a ready smile in her eyes, and she had a smile always playing around her lips. And she'd say, "Good morning, top of the morning to you. How are you today?" And people couldn't help but respond and smile back. Jenny Brown was one of 9 children, and she came 7th, and she was her mother's strength. She got up before her mother every day and put the turf on the fire so that the kettle would be singing when her mother would come down. And when her mother said, "Oh, Jenny, Christmas is coming and I don't have enough money to buy a tablecloth. We're going to have a bare table for Christmas, Jenny." Jenny would look at her mum and say, "Sure, Mum, doesn't your smile light our hearts? Your smile is the only Christmas present that we need." And so she lightened her mother's burdens. Her father was working far away across the sea, like a lot of the men of that time, sending home the little bits of money so that they could feed the children. Jenny would walk down from the top of Cork, down the little hills, down towards the River Lee, across the bridge and to the trading area called the Coal Quay. It still trades to this day, and tomorrow we're coming out of lockdown and the traders will smile at one another again. And they have their own traditions that stretch back across families, across time, that are meaningful to my people. And one of their traditions is good hansel. If someone with good energy and a smiling face buys from your stall first thing in the morning, you will have good trade all day. And as Jenny Brown would wake her way through the Coal Quay, all the traders would say, Jenny Brown, come here. Come on, girl, you're good hansel. I'll give you a bargain, Jenny Brown." And so she always did well with the purchases, and her mother always let her do the shopping. But you know, and I know, that not everything in this world is perfect. And so it was for Jenny. She had her little dreams too, you know, secret little dreams in her heart that she didn't really share with a lot of people. There was a beautiful jewellery shop in the middle of Cork City. It was called T.L. Egan. There was gold there and silver, and right in the centre of the window there was a black opal. Oh, it shimmered. It seemed to call Jenny as she passed the window, and she took to taking a different route. Instead of just coming down the hills, she took a side road and walked down by the River Lee so that she could pass the window. And when she did, right there in the window, she'd line her reflection up so that it seemed that her reflection was wearing the beautiful bauble, the black opal. Oh, it shimmered and it shined and it lit her eyes up and it made her heart happy. And for the traders inside the window, the man, the silversmith that had made it, the woman that sold the jewellery, they would look at one another And they would say if there was any justice in this world, she would own the black opal. But that's not the way of the world, and silver was not meant for Jenny Brown. So Jenny would carry on down to the Colgate to do her bits of shopping. Then the great news came. The news came that Jenny Brown's sister was going to be married. And her mother said, you know the old saying, one wedding is the making of another. And they danced around the kitchen and Jenny threw her head back and laughed. And her mother said, I have a secret, Jenny. I have a secret. I've been putting my pennies away and I have a shining shilling for you. And you're going to spend it on a bottle green coat. It's too big for you, Jenny. But when you buy it and you bring it home, we'll steep it in carbolic soap to make it soft. And then we'll unpick all the stitches. We'll turn it inside out so that the new colour faces the world. And we'll make you a new coat, a bottle green coat. And it will set off your dark, dark hair and your beautiful green eyes. And you'll be the belle of the ball. Thanks, ma'am, she said. I can't believe it. A coat just for me, and I don't have to share it with any of my brothers and sisters. Indeed, and you won't, she said. You'll wear it to Mass on Sundays, and that coat will be just for you, Jenny. Jenny was singing to herself going down the hills of Cork that day. Beautiful city, charming and pretty, beautiful city, my home by the lea. But as she passed the window of T.L. Egan, she saw an empty space where the black opal had been. She couldn't help it. Her heart sank and the song ran away from her lips. She dragged her feet down Patrick Street, trying to think of the bottle green coat, trying to think how grateful she should be. But every time her mind went back to that black opal and the picture she had of it around her neck. The old people of Cork, they would call that covetousness, and they would bless themselves. And they'd say, don't look, Jenny, not even in your mind's eye, don't look. But she couldn't help it. And as she walked down Patrick Street, she saw a new trader, an old woman with a black shawl near Dawn Square. And she had her arms crossed. Jenny Brown, she called. Jenny Brown, come here. I hear you're good Hansel, Jenny Brown. And Jenny was just about to walk past her when the old woman opened her shawl and closed it again. There was a glint there. There was something, and it drew Jenny's eye. And the woman, with a tantalising slowness, opened her shawl again. Jenny Brown, Jenny Brown, look what I have. Come here, Jenny Brown. And Jenny moved, without knowing that she was doing it, towards the black opal, with her hands out. She had never touched it before, but this was her opportunity to hold it. Just at the last minute, the woman slapped her hand away. Well now, Jenny Brown, you're a good Hansel. If I sell you this at a good price, Jenny Brown, will you give me your custom? And Jenny said, well, how much is it? 5 shining shillings, Jenny Brown. 5 shining shillings, a price just for you. Is that all? Said Jenny. She couldn't believe her luck. And she took the 5 shillings out of her pocket. The 5 shillings that was meant for the second-hand coat that her mother had dreamt for her in love. She put out her hand with the money in it into the waiting hand of the trader. And in return, the trader took the black opal from around her own neck and tied it around Jenny. Oh, the weight of it was pleasing. She was delighted with herself. Oh, the smile was as bright as ever it was on Jenny's face, and her eyes were dancing with joy. Oh, it feels as if it was made for me, said Jenny. It feels as if it was made for me. And she danced down the road. But as she did, she thought of her mother's face and the disappointment in her eyes when she'd learned that Jenny Brown didn't have the money for the bottle green coat, the hope of another wedding. And as she came to Roach's stores on Cork's own Patrick Street, she met a neighbour, and the neighbour said, "Jenny, I've never seen you, girl, with a line of worry up your face. What's going on?" And she said, "Oh God." And she told her the story, and the woman said, "Jenny Brown, sure don't, I know that you're good for it. I'll give you the 5 shillings and you pay me off 1 penny a week. Sure, I knows where you live." And she pressed a 5 shilling note into Jenny's hand. Jenny looked at her and she said, "It's bringing me luck already. It's bringing me everything I want, everything I desire." And she skipped down the road, and her neighbour was thinking about the old sayings and the energies that jewellery could hold. Jenny bought the coat, and indeed, one wedding made her the belle of the ball, and she caught many eyes. But there was one boy that she truly loved. She threw the glad eye at him all night, and at the end of the night, he felt courage enough to come over and ask her for a dance, and she was delighted. Oh, the black opal is still working, she thought. But then, over the days and the weeks that followed, she began to notice that his collar was worn, that his cuffs were torn, that he had dirt under his nails. She didn't notice the hope in his eyes, or the smile at the corner of his lips, or his soft word. And over time, her mother noticed differences too. She began to frown more than she smiled. She began to get lines on her face, around her mouth, the pinched look of somebody who's always disapproving. She would say things to her mother like, "For God's sake, ma'am, you think we could get a covering for the floor? Painting it indeed. Do you think people won't know that we have painted our floor?" Or, "For God's sake, ma'am, potatoes again," knowing that her mother was struggling to keep all of the children fed. And her mother began to get fed up with the humours and the moods of Jenny Brown. "Jenny," she said, "you go and see the priest." And Jenny, who was getting fed up of herself, said, "All right, so, ma'am, I will." On the day that they agreed this, on Ceol Dríochta, the magic mists of Cork were rising from the Lee. Thickly they made their way up the streets of Cork, up Shandon Street that Jenny Brown with her mother was walking down. As they came near the end of the street, you couldn't even tell that they had legs. It looked as if they were floating through the magic mists of Cork. And then on the steps of St. Mary's Church, she saw her, the woman, with her shawl crossed and a cranky face, a face that Jenny now too owned. The woman looked at her, and Jenny turned to her mother and said, "Ma'am, I can't go with you. I can't go into Mass." And her mother said, "You won't go in. You won't go in." And she said, "No, ma'am, I can't go in." And her mother, she knew it to be true. And the woman, she stood guard at the top of the steps of St. Mary's Church. She made a lonely figure climbing Shandon Street with the black opal around her neck. Jenny Brown died with that bauble around her neck. The priest removed it at her mother's instruction. Her mother took the black opal and put it into a little velvet purse. If you stand at the North Cathedral of Cork City and look up Cathedral Road, on the right-hand side of the road, you'll see the houses with the trees in their garden. Jenny Brown's mother buried that bauble in the roots of one of those trees. Do you desire a shining black opal? Will you risk it? or if you feel it calling to you through the mist as you walk through Cork City, will you cover your eyes, even in your mind's eye, and run, run like hell to be free? And that's my story.
What a story to finish on. What stories we've had tonight. Oh, right. Let's one more time for David Thompson. For Zara Rafsan. For Bob Kanagas. For Maria Gillan. Fantastic. And all of you for coming and listening.
Oh,
now, for
wonderful.
those that are in the room, because some of you probably haven't seen each other for a while, so maybe we'll just sit and talk for a while. And meanwhile, if we can kill the Facebook feed, because the performance is over. Thank you very much. But now it is time to natter. So Ali, if you could kill the Facebook feeds, that would be brilliant, if that's possible. And
It's done.
That's done, is it? Fantastic. So now we are all to ourselves. Unmute yourselves and say hello to each other. Ask questions, do whatever you like. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the stories. It was a real mixture of things that interest the people in our community. And I can really relate to picturing myself in a necklace in a window and sacrificing things that I shouldn't just to have that necklace.
I can picture you doing that, Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'd flog it eventually, so you get your luck back.
After I've worn it a while, it often moves on to somebody else. But thank you for sharing the stories tonight. That was great. Thank you.
Yes, they were wonderful stories. Thank you for letting me come. And I have to go, but this was a great time. Thank you.
Great to see you, Jane.
Okay.
Okay.
And I mean, one of the great. I go back to Bob's Walt Whitman quote. You know, when Sarah suggested that I might like to get hold of Lucy and Mike to have something to do with this cafe. I've gone down this sort of rabbit hole, which has been just full of storytellers and stories, and I feel good fortune has been with me for months and months, which is a strange thing to say in these times. But thank you all the tellers that have kept this going.
Yeah. So I just have loved this, and thank you to Sarah for putting jewellery and stories together. You know, so yeah, that's it. Like I was like, when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, because I've also put, jewelry. I became a silversmith, so I could make my own amulet, and then I left, and my tutors were like, are you not going to make anything else? So Sarah, you talk about, kind of buying things you shouldn't. I was buying silver and knocking things up. And it just felt, it felt frivolous, but it's important too, so yeah.
I think one of the most magical things about jewelry is that it's not just the object in itself, it has a story. It has the story, if it's an old piece of jewelry, of everybody who chose it, everybody who wore it, the significance that it had to that person, and also how it traveled, because it doesn't have legs or wheels to move by itself, and it can only move when someone chooses to do that. So those stories are, for me, as important as the jewels themselves. So the two seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
There's a sort of a shaggy dog story, but it has a really great point where a merchant asks a buyer, You know, it's $5 for the piece. It's $100 if you want the story that goes with it. And a lot of versions of the story, but the man doesn't take the story and pays the consequences later.
We market that concept and we call it provenance.
And we mustn't forget that if we want more of Sarah's stories, come to us next Saturday at the same time. And because
can I also thank Arpit, who's one of our amazing admin teams, as is Annie. But Arpit stayed up till the middle of the night to be here because he's in Jaipur in India. So that's real dedication to being one of my admins, which is kind of how people get on the team, because they're dedicated and wonderful and brilliant.
Fantastic.
What is it, about midnight in India? I bet.
Yeah, it's around 1 o'clock here in India. 1 o'clock.
Wow.
Yeah.
1 o'clock.
Yeah.
About time to start partying then.
I hope your girls let you have a rest in the morning and don't wake you up too early, Arpit.
Don't know. Yeah, still they are not going to school, so yeah, I will be having the good sleep.
Keep socially distanced as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
The stories.
Bye, Stephanie.
Thanks for joining us, Stephanie.
Thank you very much, everyone.
So thank you to John for bringing this evening together. When I mentioned it as one of my crazy ideas, he didn't even bat an eyelid. He just took it in his stride as one of Sarah's crazy ideas, and here we all are. So thank you so much to everybody.
Sarah, I've just spotted Frances Kennedy there, and Frances Kennedy is a holder of a lot of the traditional Irish stories, you know, so I just want to say hello, Frances, and I'm delighted you came.
I thought, my God, you were great magic in the air tonight. So there was, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And weaving of stories and the weaving of magic rugs and birds' feathers into them. And of course, Marie's amulet. We have held it. We have held it. Ooh, and maybe we coveted what was in it.
Frances,
congratulations, you're all magic.
Yeah, I just because we're having a chat here and we don't see Frances enough during the COVID cloud days. Frances, can you tell him a little bit about the time before time when the fish talk? Because I can see the Fia behind you, which is here.
And can I even remember it now?
Just a bit about the language, because
I didn't write it that long ago, so I should remember it. Back to the time before the Tuatha Danann. Before, oh my God, can I even remember it? Oh, I'm very bad altogether.
Frances, please come to us on the 13th at 6 o'clock and come to our worldwide story round, and come and tell. That'll give you a minute to remember it. And please join us there.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I'm going to thank everybody.
Maria, you can remind her that she's going to do that.
I will, because it's hearing.
The 13th. I'm looking for them. We'll be there.
I remind you.
We'll be there. Not in the half.
Oh, fantastic!
Thank you, John.
Sarah, are you flying off, or are you managing to go to Iran? You said you might go to Iran next week.
Yes, I was planning, but I'm staying a bit longer, 2 more weeks, and then I might go then.
So you'll be live next weekend on Saturday?
Yes, I will be live, yes.
Fantastic.
I try to make the lighting better. I think I make it better for next week, yes.
It looks, it's
fine. It's fine.
That's good.
It looks good? Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. I think this topic is wonderful. For me, carpet weaving is is so amazing. The whole action and everything which goes, you know, within it, about it, around it. And I'm so delighted that John asked me, because I started researching on the songs that women in Iran sing when they weave carpets. And I have to say, I was fascinated. The exact terminologies they use, and when they change colors and when they change patterns, it all comes out in their songs. And thank you so much, really. Thanks to all of you.
Oh,
thanks for sharing.
yeah.
Amazing. I want to hear more about that now. I'm fascinated.
Better
What
come along next
instrument you
Saturday
were
then,
playing?
Lucy.
Yeah. What instrument you were playing? Show us the instrument.
Sorry. Oh, this was, I mean, I was using this, and you know, it says top. It's when they comb, which they create that sound, top. And then they say coop. I mean, I had to create that through this and this, but in reality, it is when they are weaving, and when you go to the rooms or the tents, you hear that all the time.
Yeah.
That story, that we it is so amazing story.
Ah, thank you, David.
Thank you.
We understand about the body go story that not o'clock.
I heard stories at 8 o'clock, the bit at the end, David. Is that a good time?
Okay, gathered.
All gathered, yeah.
Well, it's been a wonderful gathering, and thank you very much. I think we better let Arpit go to bed. Because you know, he'll feel duty bound to stay to the end. So we'll let Arpit go to bed.
Thank you, Arpit.
Well, good night, everybody, and thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah Brass.
Thank you.
Good night. Stay safe, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Good night. Good night, Dave. Is that David behind Lucy?
It's Mike.
It's Mike. Yeah.
It's Mike. You're at a weird angle, Mike.
Good night.
Bending over.
You look like you'd sort of been taking the slimming pills, but maybe you're standing sideways.
Oh, dear.
Good night.